welcome, welcome, welcome to Health Issues. I'm your host, Chris Sylvain, and so thoroughly excited about today. It's really a great show, and we have a great guest on, and he's been on before. We're excited to have him. We've been able to work with him. We have the Reverend Shawn Anglim. He is the pastor of First Grace United Methodist Church, and literally one of the leaders in speaking about the issue of the monument. So, hey, welcome, Reverend. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me back.
Well, hey, we enjoyed last time and definitely excited to have you today. You know, the big issue, and we'll talk about a lot of other things, the big issue in dealing with the monuments, there's a lot of controversy, and as this taping is going on now, yesterday, there was so much going on. But before we get into the monument issue, let's talk about your walk through this. What brought you kind of here in this, even dealing with the concept of it?
Well, thank you for that question, Chris. It's you know, like everyone, we have our own story with life and with these matters. And what happened with me must have been 2.5 years ago. I arrived at our church, First Grace, and I was about to walk in the front door, and the assistant came out and said, there's a news station here, and they want to talk to you about the graffiti on the Jeff Davis monument. And I said, where's the Jeff Davis monument? She said, right across the street. I said, there's a monument to Jeff Davis? And of course, I knew there was a monument to Jeff Davis, but you get used to things. Yeah. We're on Jefferson Davis Boulevard. How can you not notice? You don't think about it much. Right. But lo and behold, there we were. There had been some incidents where unarmed men had been shot, and people had put graffiti on the monuments. And so they came to talk to me about that. And as I recall, I said the question was, should we remove the graffiti from the Jeff Davis monument? And I said, I don't think we should do that so quickly. That people who do not have a voice will find a way to have a voice. And maybe we need to reflect on that as a community. What is this about? And so that's sort of where it started. And then it would come up in small ways. Someone would bring it up to my attention. Then my children attend a public school, Morris Jeff Community School, that's a block from the Jeff Davis Monument. And my daughter started playing on the softball team, and lo and behold, they had practice on the neutral ground under the watchful eye of Jefferson Davis. And you just begin to notice, like, our school children are under this towering monument to Jefferson Davis. And then one day my son, who was 7 at the time, he said, "Daddy, who was that?" And so now you're trying to explain to your son who Jefferson Davis is and why you would have a monument. How did this monument get there? And so, you know, this has been my walk. And then, of course, what happened at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston struck a deep chord, and somehow I knew and felt that these monuments, they're not even so much to Jeff Davis. They are monuments to white power. They were all put up at the same time in the Jim Crow era, and we didn't put up 1, and we didn't put up 2, and we didn't put up 3, and we didn't put up 4. People put these monuments up everywhere. And it was very clearly an attempt to say, these are symbols of who's in power, because symbols are about power. You can't say symbols don't mean something. Obviously, we're seeing they mean a lot to people, and they represent what we value. And those monuments were clear symbols that those in power were saying, this is about who's up and who's down and who's in power, and people better fall in line. And so, you know, I began to feel that strong in my heart, and I want to say I'm not the only genius in the room, because people in Charleston felt that way. People in Maryland were taking things off of license plates. People in Virginia, the University of Texas very quickly said it's not appropriate to have a statue of Jefferson Davis at the centerpiece of the campus. That is not appropriate. That is not what we value. Yes, it's a historical statue, but there's a proper place where you can talk about a proper context for these things. And so for me, having these monuments in the high places of our city was not about who we are as a people. It's not about what we stand for as New Orleanians. There's a place, there's a museum to tell this history. But these are places that we gather as a people, things we want to celebrate as a common people. And again, if it was maybe one monument, that's not what happened. These were put in multiple places, in high places, to say this is what the city is about. We also need to remember that there was something there before them. We think about these monuments as if they've been there for all eternity. But in fact, somebody said, we're going to name this square Tivoli Square. And then some group of people came around and said, no, we want to change that because we have something else we want to honor. And then Jefferson Davis Parkway wasn't always named Jefferson Davis Parkway. Excuse me, I can't remember if it was Rendon or Hayden. So somebody named it Hayden, and then somebody came along and said, no, we're going to change it because this is what we value. Well, now we're the somebodies. And the question to us as New Orleanians is, what do we value? What do we want to celebrate as a common people? And that is the struggle we're having. We want to assume that these struggles there's a way to have them where there's no pain involved, where it's not a struggle. And as we know, that's just not the way it is. It's difficult. It's hard for us to face our history. It's a shameful history. It's hard to look into it. But that's what we need to do. And I just believe if we do that as a people, and if we learn to listen to each other, in a year or two, or 3, or 4, or 5, we will look back on this time, be grateful for the struggle that we've been through, and we will feel that we have found a common voice that we can celebrate as a common people.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Can't help but think, though, that there are many religious leaders on various sides, of this issue. But what are some of the structural things in your theologies, philosophies that make it so comfortable for you to move there? Say, like if you were in a classroom teaching young seminary students or whatever, or just individuals or at the congregation, what are some of the tenets, foundational things that really make it simple, where it just kind of rolls off your tongue?
Yeah, I'm grateful because I always want to learn from people. And what I find, someone once gave me the advice, you should look for the saints that you connect with, and you should read everything they've written, and you should study them and find their wisdom. And for me, there's several people that I really look for, and one, of course, is Reverend Martin Luther King. And one of his great lines, he was asked, do you love your enemy? And he said, yes, I do. And it was like, well, how can you do that? And his response was, I have seen the same hatred and anger in myself that I have seen in them. And I know that I am no different than they are. We are just human beings on this common journey. And the moment I think I'm up and they're down, I've lost the battle. In fact, I've become the very thing that I despise. And so seeing people, even yesterday, who feel very differently about this than I do, and just appreciating that I have felt anger and rage and outrage. I have been offended that people don't understand me. I have felt like I wanted to flip someone off. That is all inside of me also. And so engaging people in the struggle is a spiritual endeavor because that's the only way you get somewhere. You know, as a pastor, when a member of my church comes to see me and says, "Pastor, I really need to talk to you about this. I don't like the way you handled this," or "I think you were wrong." And the first question is, can I listen? Can I just listen to someone and appreciate that? And then can I hear that, and can I appreciate where they're coming from? Even if we disagree, can I appreciate where they're coming from? And that's a spiritual journey, and it is well worth the travel.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. The community, though. So we're in discussing it from a Christocentric viewpoint. But for it to move forward, it has to reach the greater community. Your thoughts on Christian values being placed into a broader community where various faiths, thoughts, and so forth go on?
Well, I don't think, the greatest values are collective values. In other words, they're in a common wisdom. And every religion, be it Islam, be it Christianity, be it Judaism, be it Buddhism, Hinduism, the centerpiece is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, along with empathy. That's basically a question of empathy. You know, the way the Native Americans whom we took this place from, the way they said it is, have you walked a mile in the moccasins of someone else's, shoes? And so, these are very simple and real questions to ask yourself as a New Orleanian. I really value this symbol, but I could really understand how it deeply offends everyday people. These monuments were not built in the days of the pyramids. They were built 75, 100 years ago by the great-grandfathers and the grandfathers of people who are alive in this city, people who have the same names as those who built those monuments. This is not a long ago history. Jim Crow came all the way up to our current mayor's father. This is not ancient history. This is current history. This is what people have lived through and continue to live through. And so to be able to say, I'm a human being like you, and I can empathize that even though my great-grandfather paid to have this monument of Jefferson Davis put up, I can empathize with you that it's offensive in a very real way, a reminder of a time when we tried to push people down again, not just of slavery, but of Jim Crow. And I can say to myself, there's a better place for this monument, these monuments. And again, remembering it's not one monument. People didn't erect one Confederate monument during the era of Jim Crow. They are all over this city. So that is yes, it's a central aspect of the Christian walk, but I think it's a central aspect of the human walk. That's one of the values in my children's school is about empathy, right? I don't think anyone would say, take that value down, that's a Christian value, you can't have it up. It's a human value.
It seems as though that the monuments are an argument, but obviously around the nation and literally around the world, technology, I think, probably has a lot to do with it, but we're facing constantly this question of whose values trump other values. Mm-hmm. Just your thoughts on the idea of turning the other cheek also, mm-hmm. but how forcefully should these values of right be pushed on a broader community that obviously are arguing a point against it?
Yes. Well, one of the great, every community, every marriage, every relationship, every nation is built around a group of common values. And part of the genius of America is that we said one of our central values is that you respect difference, that there's a right to free speech, and that what happened yesterday, even as painful as that can be, we trust as Americans this is the way forward. It is living through that with each other, of even being sad about what we said and wanting to go back and work that out maybe in a better way. But we believe as Americans that struggle with different opinions is what makes us Americans. It is really the capacity to listen to each other, to struggle together. This is what will lead us forward. So our country is built on a series of a Bill of Rights and constitutions that begins by saying everyone should be treated equally, and that there should be forums for that to be worked out. It doesn't say everyone should think the same thing. That's we would never get anywhere. In fact, you'd never get married. If that's your approach to things. So I think we do have a set of common principles and values, and then we really have to trust what happened yesterday. We have to trust that if we have that kind of conversation, which has been going on well before Mitch Landrieu, well before the mayor before that, there has been the struggle. There's just been something, there's been an event that has put it in front of us. But the struggle's been there for some time. But if we say we really trust that, then what we believe as Americans is that'll get us one step closer to the truth. And as we might say as Christians, it gets us one step closer to the kingdom.
Fantastic, fantastic. You used the word earlier, and it always, the phrase always makes me think, I know it makes a lot of folk uncomfortable, black, white, or whatever, but you use the word white power, comfortably though.
Well, I want to speak for myself and not necessarily for the clergy group that I've been working for, but these monuments were put up by white people. They should be taken down by white people. I really wish there was a huge coalition of white people who say, we understand this history well enough. We know exactly what happened. There was a civil war, and the men who fought it, the men and women who served in that in the Confederacy, served with valor. But the cause for which they fought was shameful. It was the ownership of other people as an economic system and as something we value as a society. That is shameful. I think we all can agree with that. That war ended. There was a brief period of Reconstruction. It failed. And then guess what? Jim Crow and all these monuments started popping up everywhere. We can see that history, pretty simply for what it is. Should it be told? Absolutely. Should my children learn about it? Absolutely. Just like if you go to Berlin in Germany, there is a Holocaust museum, and it tells the whole story, start to finish. Who did it, what they did, and why they did it. We don't really have a place like that in America. There's some deep issue of shame in the fear of recognizing that we haven't been able to get to. So for me, that would be my wish, but I accept that I'm not going to get that wish. What I can expect and hope is that I'm going to speak my message out of conviction and out of love for my brothers and sisters who don't agree with me. And I'm going to listen and hear them, and I'll be moved by them, and they will affect the way I see and understand things, which they have, and I'm greatly appreciative of the people who've been courageous enough to speak. But then I'm still going to stand in my conviction. The spiritual turn when you stand in your conviction is that you do not become bitter towards those who see things differently, that you can still stand with them as a neighbor, as a person in a country, and know that this isn't the last struggle we're going to have. There's going to be something down the road, And because you've been able to treat them respectfully, you'll be able to engage that respectfully.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about the group. Just how did the group form, and just some general, I guess.
Well, that is a bit of a miracle. And by a miracle, I mean you do certain things, and then things happen that you have no control over. And so shortly after I made it known that I was taking personal responsibility for the monument across the street from my church, shortly thereafter, the next week, the mayor happened to have a prayer breakfast. And I have not done a good job of making connections with my fellow clergy. You know, we all get tunnel vision with what we're doing. But the prayer breakfast came up, and several clergy started speaking with me. One was the Reverend Dr. Torrin Sanders of Sixth Baptist Church, who was a regular preacher at First Grace. And we decided we were going to get together. And it turned out that Reverend Antoine Barrier was sitting next to me at the breakfast, and Reverend Sanders said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" And then Reverend Sanders said something to Reverend Jimmy Autry, who's on the West Bank, and we got together. We even invited the Archbishop, and the Archbishop came to the first meeting. And we started talking about what we thought we should do. And then Reverend Dr. Chris Gordon started coming to the meetings, and we decided we would compose a letter that we continued to listen to the community and to reflect on our own position and our own hearts. Why did we feel this was necessary? What should we be reconsidering? And from that reflection, we composed a letter under the name of Clergy for a United City. And we sent it out to clergy. We asked them to sign on, you being one of them. And people started signing on, including Fred Luter, including David Crosby. And pretty soon we had over 100 clergy. I think we're over 125 clergy. And then we decided to make it known, to hold a press conference and say this is what we are doing. Since then, we've started reflecting on, obviously, symbols are very important. But if you think you're going to change everything just by changing some symbols, you're delusional. But the symbols are important. And so we've begun to think about what is our life together need to look like. And the first thing, we need to be building relationships with each other. We should get to know each other better. And then begin working in our churches and in our community for the places where we need to have this voice. The power of our group is it's very diverse, and it started off that way. And so I think we feel that gift, and we feel that we come from very different places in the city. But here we are.
Fantastic. And there was another, there's more to come, though. There's
much more to come. And we don't know what that is. We don't have an agenda other than we love our city, and we are pastors in our city, and we know there is a responsibility that comes with that. And it's not just for your people. If you are just about your church, then you're like an interloper. You just suck life out of things. We should be giving life to the city. I tell my church, when people drive by our church, they should say, we're glad that place exists. That's that place, where this happens. And that's what we need to do. We need to be a voice. And at times like this, even when we are uncomfortable, we need to find the courage and the compassion to speak in a way that we hope people can hear, but to speak the truth to power as we think it needs to be done.
We have a couple of more minutes, but there was a question at the news conference. A reporter asked, and if I can get it even close to being right, what difference does the clergy feel that they could make? I guess at the time was just having a press conference, but coming together. And I found that question it still grapples in my head, as if that would stop anybody. But if you can grab a hold to that for a second.
Well, I think it makes a difference if your church is making a difference in the city. and where you're part of this place called New Orleans, that this is the place you love, and you are living it with people as an institution, as a community within a community that wants to have a voice. My church has Hagar's House, which is a residence for homeless women and children. It is a beautiful home, and thank you for interviewing me a few years ago about it. Now we have a legal clinic for Latino children that we started 5 years ago when we realized we had children in our community that found themselves in all sorts of predicaments, and now we have started this small legal clinic. There are over 300 Latinos that meet in our church to organize themselves. They're day laborers. So if your choice is if your church is a blessing to the city, you begin to have a voice in the city. And as you know, as a pastor, you begin to see your people having struggles and difficulties, and you're wondering, why do they have that problem? Why did they only make $8 an hour? Should I be saying something addressing that? Your voice becomes a clergy voice. I believe the public, when they hear a clergy voice, what they should hear is someone who is not just speaking their own interest, but is trying to speak the interest of the common good. It doesn't mean everybody would agree with that, but the trust given to a pastor is that you speak to the common good.
Just a few more seconds. There's a cost, as you spoke about, in the struggle. It's not free. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And various pastors and people are committing to these causes.
Mm-hmm.
As Martin Luther King, he lost his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a possibility.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm going to lose my life, but no, I think part of the cost, in Christian terms, we say there's a cross to bear. And if you're not bearing any kind of cross in your pastoral duties, then you're not very close to Jesus. You might be close to your version of Jesus, but not the original Jesus. And so there is a cross to bear. And again, I think the turn is really to believe that if you stand for what is good and right, over time, that will emerge. The truth and beauty of that will emerge.
Well said. I think we can cut it off just the way it is. Fight as hard as you can. Thank you.
Thank you.